Human trafficking isn't what Hollywood tells you it is. It's not just shadowy figures in vans. It's the neighbor who looks away, the company that doesn't ask any questions, the system that pretends awareness is enough. At Lynn's Warriors, we fight for the truth and we fight for children and all people, women, men, caught in the darkness that too many refuse to see. Our guest knows that darkness firsthand. Cristian Eduardo, a survivor, a fighter, a voice for the voiceless, born in Mexico. Now he's in New York. Cristian has turned unspeakable pain into a mission to expose the modern machinery of exploitation, the broken promises, the hidden predators, and the bureaucracies that look the other way. The conversation isn't easy, warriors, but the truth never is, because protecting children and all people isn't partisan, it's human. It's a human rights abuse issue, belongs to no political party. So everybody get on board, sit back. I am Lynn Shaw. This is Lynn's Warriors, where silence ends and the fight for every life begins. Welcome, Cristian Eduardo, to the Warriors.
Hello, Lynn. Thank you so much for that introduction. My name is Cristian Eduardo. For all the warriors that are listening, I'm a survivor of sex and labor trafficking, international and domestically. So the reality is that I was trafficked here in between actually New Jersey and New York. And a lot of people think that human trafficking is, as you were saying, on other countries to neighborhoods that are not impacting them or really outside New York State or New York City. But the reality is that we are, based on the human trafficking hotline statistics, we are number 5 in the country on human trafficking reported cases. So this is just the tip of the iceberg of what's really it's happening. Sex trafficking and labor trafficking are a lot of times running rampant. And I think that the most important piece is that those that are buying and that are fueling financially, especially sex trafficking, are just roaming free, ready to find another person who is vulnerable, who is in need, just to access them as disposable meat and throw them away.
Yeah, I was going to start, Cristian. I was going to say, now it is your story to tell. So jump right in, but you did it because you're, I'm going to say you're a subject matter expert on all of this. I really consider that. I'm proud to be a fellow New Yorker with you. Please, everyone, follow equalitymodelnewyork.org. It is the website where you can learn about a lot of things we're talking about. Again, I'll have more information in the body of the video so everybody can see how to follow Cristian, how to follow Equality Model New York, everything. We want everybody educated. Let me ask you something. You said, I always say, because I try to get people to really pay attention, Cristian. So I always kind of compare it to, it doesn't look like the movies, right? Because they really do think it looks like, I'm going to say it, it's broken record, like Pretty Woman, women looking for a prince perhaps, or men looking for something. Or also, it is always that person in a van. Sure, that happens. But now, right here in New York, all of the predation fueled by the internet, they're walking among us, right? Nobody is exempt. It's in every town, city, and rural area across America. You really also, something I really want to touch upon, I don't think there's enough talk about it. Let's see what you say. You're one of the few survivor advocates who speaks openly about it being exploited as a man. We need more of that. And also the whole male environment, LGBTQ victims. Talk a little bit about that, because I really think that's a big piece we're missing, especially in cities, we don't talk enough about. So what do you want to say about all of that?
No, absolutely. I think that especially male and boys who have been victims and are survivors of human trafficking, especially sex trafficking, there's still a lot of stigma, misinformation, myths. And this is just based on the perceptions that we have about males, that they need to be strong, that they are immune to sexual violence, but that's not the reality. And it's the same for the LGBTQ plus community. Sadly, we have romanticized this idea that prostitution or enter the sex trade or selling your body is a form of empowerment, while in reality, we have been fighting for so long against that, that we are more than our bodies, that we deserve respect, that we need to see beyond our bodies, because not because we are part of the LGBTQ plus community, it doesn't equal that our body are for consumption, for consumption, especially for the people who have disposable income, in this case, the sex buyers, just to come use us and throw us away. I think that we need to start having this conversation about the commodification of the body, what are we doing for our communities, and how we are protecting sex buyers. For everyone watching, I think that when we talk about human trafficking, we always talk about the traffickers and those that have been or are being trafficked, but we never talk about, in the case of sex trafficking, the sex buyers. And the sex buyers are the middle part. The sex buyers are the ones who are really a lot of times committing atrocities, even killing the people who are being bought and sold. And we need to start shedding light on that because they are perpetrators. They are not just people that want to help the community, like giving money. That's a false narrative. The reality is that they know what they are doing and they don't care if someone that it's engaging in prostitution or in the sex trade, it's coerced force or it's there by survival. They don't really care. They are just paying money, and that gives them the entitlement of saying, I don't care why you are here. I don't care how you enter here. I don't care if you're being abused, coerced. I'm just going to use you for my sexual like pleasure, and that's the end of the story. If you die after this, if you die during it, I really don't care. And that this is happening in New York City, New York State. The Gilgovich killer, like I think that happened. It was specifically a sex buyer looking for people in the sex trade. So this is being done in purpose. People know that nobody cares about the people who are being bought and sold, and I think that that's why it's so important to have this conversation, because we care. We care not only about women and girls, we care about boys and men and the LGBTQ plus community. We care about immigrants, and we know that the sex buyers are not going to stop because of how you identify. They don't care, and they think of all of us as disposable things. If one of us have a price, if one of us have a tag price, if one of us can be accessed because someone has money, the reality is that we are feeling this system that is like, oh, I can access everybody. Everybody has a price, and I think that that's extremely dangerous, especially with kids. When we see like how grooming technology it's increasing, they are really grooming kids not to only engage in the sex trade, but also like potentially being sex buyers.
Well, you know what, Christian, we see that already. That we have lots of cases online. You know, the media doesn't talk about it a lot, where the kids are savvy online and they're sextorting. There was a case recently. This kid in high school was somewhere here in New York State, hundreds of kids. And then the story, I couldn't find a follow up on it. They caught him, right? They didn't tell us who it was, obviously his age, but he was sextorting. It said hundreds of kids. How long have you been doing it that you're sextorting hundreds of kids? Were you doing it since sixth grade? Like what? They just said he was a high school student. It is very disturbing. I mean, we know about dangerous algorithms being fed to kids on the internet, right? We know they're seeing pornography and kids copy things. This fuels curiosity. It fuels, again, just being a copycat. We know because we work with a lot of healthcare, we know what shows up in emergency rooms and at urgent cares. We get reports, Nurses United Against Human Trafficking, strangulation marks, burns, cuts, knives. I mean, people have to understand this isn't just somebody paying for sex. You opened up a can of worms because they have to understand. We were in a meeting together last week, and somebody made the comment that they were out and they were viewing what's called the track here, one of them here in New York. And somebody made the comment back to them, oh, it's just men looking for some love or something like that, or cabbies looking for some love. That is just a disgusting comment. That kind of understanding is what we are here to break and raise awareness and educate everybody about. I mean, ending demand, we hashtag it, we say it, but until they are held accountable, or until their wallet is affected, or their pocketbook, because we have a lot of women now trafficking girls and getting involved in all this, the mother figure, the big sister. Until we do those two things, hold them accountable legally and hit them where it hurts, money, crassly, I have to say that because it's all about money, right? We will not get ahead. In your experience, let me ask you something. I know you can talk about immigration and poverty. And explain a little bit about how that makes people really vulnerable, because right now our government is shut down. So we have a lot of services shut down, for instance, SNAP with food and things like that. And when people are desperate, they'll do anything to feed themselves, feed their kids, or get involved in these situations. So I'm very concerned right now in New York. There's a lot of outcry about all of this. Explain a little bit about that.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think that a lot of people, one of the big myths, misunderstanding about being exploited is that you choose it. The reality is that no, traffickers, sex buyers are preying for individuals. And sadly, uh, cutting programs, funding for specific programs for immigrants, for those experience poverty, for those experience food insecurity, put them in high risk, because if the programs, if government, if the systems that are supposed to be there to prevent people from being exploited. And I think that a lot of times people don't understand this. Like all these programs are exactly because are there just to prevent exploitation, are exactly there so people can continue living their lives every day. And but I see a lot of dynamics very similar. I think that there is a lot of shame and guilt on people experiencing poverty or food insecurity, or that are homelessness, or that they are not able to find a job. We blame them. And interestingly enough, we do the same in prostitution and sex trafficking. We blame the people who are being bought and sold, but we don't blame those that are removing this support on the system. It's the same. We stay silent for sex buyers. They are the ones actively grooming, buying people, accessing their bodies, and we always remove the blame from them. And it's like, oh, but you are the one engaging in the sex trade. You are the one like selling your body, and we never stop to think about why. And I think that what you are saying is very important, because this is a tangible uh, example of why people are doing it, because they are poor, because they need to feed their kids, because the system is failing them. And the reality is that this opened the door for traffickers and sex buyer. Is when you find yourself without resources, without a house, experiencing hunger, like guess what, guess who is coming in, as you were saying, with this disposable income. And it's not that they want to come and help people. It's like, if you give me access to your body, I'm going to uh, provide you with what you need. And that's basically a coercion. Like, there, we don't need more. Like, it's a situation of power, and they are exploiting this situation out of them. And at the end, as we were saying, people are being harmed, not only psychologically, emotionally, sexually, but even people are losing their lives. And this is the reality. We need to face this. We need to open our eyes. This is not about like politics, who is wrong or who is bad. Like, this is impacting our kids, LGBTQ plus youth, our immigrant community. And we are New York State. We can do better. We are supposed to be one of the leading states in the
Yes.
whole country. So we must fight exploiters, hold sex buyers accountable, and provide resources for those that have been impacted by sex, labor trafficking, or that are in situations where they need to survive.
Yeah. And I want to, what I want to ask you is, there's so many nonprofits, organizations, government. We're talking about this. I know you are. I am 24/7, 365. It's
Yeah.
what we talk about. They're all claiming, okay, we know it's bad, the trafficking, end trafficking. We seem to be putting a band-aid, as I like to say, on everything, which is ridiculous because it's just a vicious cycle of going around of exploitation and growing. Um, Billions of dollars are spent on fighting this. Billions are spent by these buyers. I don't even like to say buyers. It's a very cringy type of, it's horrible. These are criminals that would buy somebody's body. But we're not actually restoring or saving lives. Why do you think, if I can sit here and tell you this, Christian, and you know this as well, I think you agree with me. What's the problem? Why aren't we really digging in to end this? Because it's quite clear that we do have solutions. We can plug in the holes. We do have good people working on things. We could put them in charge. Why can't we just do it? I really don't understand. I'm tired of hearing law enforcement does not have the resources, or a nonprofit does not have enough money, blah, blah, blah. Expand on this a little bit.
Yeah, no, I really think that the first part is that there's people who are benefiting, like everywhere, like
You
sex
mean like
buyers.
making money? Like it's a business now, human trafficking? Because that's what I'm seeing. Just jump in here.
It's a multi-billionaire like industry, and I think that people don't realize this, but it's uh, for example, drugs are, and I don't like comparing drugs with human bodies or humans' life, but drugs are sold one time, but human beings can be sold several times. So I think that that's it's really a business, and the other part also is that we are afraid of being labeled as not progressive enough, someone that is anti-sex when we talk about addressing prostitution, because we assume that trafficking is just happening to kids or young adults, and the reality is that we don't want to talk about adults engaging in sex trade or adult bodies being bought and sold, because we assume that everybody should be able like to be responsible, to be aware, to be able to protect themselves against coercion or force. And but the reality is that the less we talk about this, the less we talk about how adults can also be coerced, being forced, how adults can be exploited, the more power we are giving to
Yeah.
traffickers, those sex buyers, and everybody exploiting them. And we need to have this conversation. It's not only about two consenting adults engaging in sexual activity. It's beyond that. It's about power and control. It's about exploiting our communities, and it's about just keeping control over our communities and silencing victims. That's the reality. In the beginning, you were saying you are just a few of the survivors that I know that are speaking Samuel and Boy. The reality is that not all survivors of sex trafficking speak out, because the reality is that a lot of times traffickers and sex buyers, they hold position of powers, they have a lot of money, and the reality also is that if you speak against prostitution, um, you get outed, you get vetted from your own community. But the reality is that I don't care, because I don't want anybody to go through what I went. I was by myself. I was exploited. I thought that this was the normal, the reality. I couldn't even cry. Like I was just breathing, to be honest. And if I was breathing, it was because my body knows how to do it. I think that the impact of being trafficked, of being bought and sold, it's such a huge impact that people don't want to see it. We want to just stay silent, and it's like it's something that is happening. It's something that has
Mhm.
always happened, but that doesn't mean that it's 2025. We need to fight against all these things. We need to stop normalizing the exploitation and the selling of other human beings.
Yeah. And I want to always, Christian, thank you for bravely always sharing and speaking out and really being so vocal about it. We need more of that. We need more passion. We need more dedication and commitment. It's the only way to get in there and educate people. Or, your story actually makes me cry. I wish I knew you then, that you were like alone. I remember one day you said something somewhere. I heard you talking like they gave you I don't know, a Metro card or something to get on a train to go out somewhere in the rain or something to like Queens, way far away, somewhere they told you to go. I don't, I actually got tears in my eyes. I remember thinking, this is horrible. Who does that? And telling you, hurry up, the place is going to close or some
Yes,
awful. And I remember thinking, geez, how can you manage subways and New York and all of this? We have to do better and we have to keep speaking about it. I also listen, this people really don't understand what prostitution is. Prostituted people. They don't take into consideration, if we want to break it down financially, the cost to the healthcare system. People get sick, people visit emergency rooms, people are using, right? That whole burden. There is actually a study out from last year, and it was like $1.5 billion directly attributed to healthcare with trafficking. So that's money. So people usually wake up when they hear money, but still they're not waking up. And the other thing is, nobody talks really, they do, but they really don't, Christian. They don't understand trauma. I
yes,
can't tell you how many people say to me, that wouldn't happen to me. I'd run away. Where are you running to? When you are psychologically beaten down, you have nowhere to go, even your story, um, being put on a train and all. you will do anything to survive. So I think we have to talk more, but we got to get in there, I think, Christian, with kids and start the education early because they're learning so much on the internet. What do you think about that?
No, absolutely. I think that because we don't want to talk about sex, sexual education, we don't want to talk about prostitution, the impact that it has largely in society, we are silently creating more traffickers, more sex buyers, because we're telling them it's okay to buy others people's body. If
Right.
you have money to do it instead of supporting other individuals, instead of like creating programs. What we are telling them is like, if someone is in need, if someone is vulnerable, use your power, use your money to access their body and dispose them after that. And this is something that is actively happening. Well, when we deny the realities of people in prostitution, when we deny that people are there, as you were saying, uh, what will people do? Like in my situation, I was by myself, alone, um, dealing already with mental health, already knowing that I was living with HIV, and just giving me a metro car and go find a shelter in the subway system. That's the part that people don't understand, that coercion doesn't end when you are out of the situation, but coercion is still are there. Because a lot of times I thought about that. I was like, what am I doing this? Like, at least with my traffickers where I was being exploited, I had a place to sleep if I was allowed to sleep, but I wasn't worried about all these things. Like, I wasn't worried about. I think that, as you were saying, people don't understand the trauma. People don't understand that trauma, coercion, psychological coercion, and the abuse put you into a place that is like there's no more options, even if there are options in front of you, because that's the main goal of traffickers and sex buyers. Is like there's no more options, then you continue doing it. And when we fail survivors and victims, the reality is that we are telling them, go back to your trafficker, go back to selling your body, because that's the best thing that you can do.
Hmm. Let me ask you something. I'm always very careful about survivors. I really think it's kind of a sacred story. Um, we do a lot of work at the Warriors behind the scenes with survivors. I don't do pictures, and I
Mhm.
interview very few unless they really like yourself because you're outspoken. We need you. You want to do this. But do you ever feel like people are using you for like photo ops or politicians or groups? Because before I knew anything and started this, and I just because I was passionate, that's how I started with all of this. Like I couldn't believe this was happening, right? The first thing I remember seeing Christian was like I was at an event and these three young women, right, were survivors. And I just remember sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, they're like kind of being showcased. Like the audience was staring at them weirdly, weirdly, almost like, and they were like, also, it was an organization, I will never name it, but the girls had like, I'm not being judgy, but I kind of am. Like they were all made up and a lot of jewelry, a lot of makeup, high heel shoes. And I thought, and remember, I just started the Warriors. I'm like, I don't think this is really like the face, the look of a true survivor. I remember now, of course, I know so much more. What do you have to say about all of that? Because I really do feel like our survivors, we don't empower them enough. We don't financially support them enough. We don't have companies that are giving something. We're working on job opportunities
Yeah,
so they can
it's
make an income so they aren't vulnerable because that's the biggest thing. You got to make money. Um, what are your thoughts on all of this?
No, absolutely. I think that a lot of organizations are engaging in re-exploiting survivors and victims, and it's very connected with what you were saying about trauma. People don't understand trauma. It's not that you are out of the situation, the exploiting situation, the trafficking situation, and you are somehow healed, and you
Yeah.
are like, oh, let me tell everybody about like my darkest moment. And sadly, a lot of organizations, community organizations, nonprofit, government agencies, just in general, what are demanding from survivors is, tell me your trauma, tell me your story, make me cry, so I can get money. And I think that a lot of times we don't understand that we are replicating traffickers tactics. That's what happened to us before. Like someone was exploiting us for their financial benefit, and by asking you without a survivor to just tell their stories, to make people cry so they can donate money, and not compensating them, not providing them support, not acknowledging their expertise, and not seeing them like holistically as human beings, like we are like exploiting survivors and victims, and we need to stop that also. I think that is another fight that we are having right now. A lot of survivors don't want to come out because it's like, no, because I'm going to be conditioned again. If you want to receive resources, if you want to be financially stable, the only way to do it is telling your trauma. And it's interesting enough, it's a paradox. You get out of sex trafficking because the only path that you could see, or the only path that you were told, is like sell your body. And when you are out of sex trafficking, now you are being told the only financially available path is to sell your trauma. And we need to go beyond that. We need to support survivors. We need to create really empowering and options for them to have sustainable job, because the reality is that poverty is there, homelessness is there, hunger is there, and if we don't support even those that escape, survive, or are out of their situation of exploitation, they can go back. This is extremely common and people don't realize this. We are not only talking about people who are exploited or can be exploited, but also people who were exploited and that can be exploited again, because we are failing them and we're just telling them the best that you can do is just tell your story, your darkest moment, and there's no more use for you.
It's horrible. But I do see the pendulum, Christian, swinging a little bit where more survivor leaders are at the table. I think every organization, I've never been sex or labor trafficked. Okay. I can't do my job. I'm very vocal about this unless you and other survivors share with me or I have you at the table, right? I think every organization has a duty to have a survivor leader, part of it, part of the conversation, definitely, part of creating legislation, part of all of that. And so I do notice, so that's a little bit of hope that more are coming into organizations and speaking out about things and part of it. So I like that. I want to get into, we're both here in New York City. A lot going on these days, Christian. We're facing the mayoral race. We will know sometime tomorrow night or the next day. We'll see how it
Yes.
goes. We'll talk about that in a minute. But, you know, there's a very growing divide. It's been simmering up since I started the Warriors, since I first met you. Actually, I saw you. You were the first event I went to. It was somewhere downtown. Don't ask me. Like in a, I don't want to say a bakery. It was in like some kind of food store thing. I just remember you were sitting there on a chair. There were a few different people. It was crowded. There's a great divide between legalizing prostitution, full decrim, equality model, Nordic model. People get very confused. Right now, we're both part of New Yorkers for the Equality Model. Explain the landscape surrounding all of this and what equality model, or I do like survivors model when that's used, what this really means. We want the public to understand because they never, when I talk about it, which is almost every day, they do not understand this.
Yes, absolutely. I would like to start saying that in New York State, prostitution is totally criminalized. I think that people forget about that. I think that a lot of times we forget that we think that we live in kind of a limbo, but the reality is that all aspects of prostitution are criminalized. So, what is the meaning of this? That traffickers, sex buyers, brothel owners, and the people who is being bought and sold are committing a crime. So what we have learned through the years is that because we have criminalized the people who are being bought and sold, we have been putting in jail victims and survivors of sex trafficking, because we cannot distinguish just by seeing someone if they are being coerced or forced. And even if we ask them and we approach them, there's still a lot of nuance on this. So after seeing this, going through years, seeing that immigrants, transgender women, the LGBTQ plus community in general, women and girls being put in jail because they were engaging in prostitution. So it's really going back to the conversation that we were having. So what we have been doing through years is blaming them. Prostitution exists because you are selling their body, rather than paying attention to what's happening on the outside, rather than saying like, oh, sex buyers are the one who are putting the money. So, sex buyers are the one committing crimes, brothel owners, traffickers. So what happened is that the conversation split. There's one part of the conversation that says, well, but prostitution should be seen just as a regular job, as a regular financial activity, like any other. Like if you are working in an office, like if you are going out and working at a grocery store, because everybody's entitled to do whatever it is with their bodies, and you are receiving money. Um, and it's very tight. The conversation, it's around empowerment, choice, uh, allowing individuals to do whatever they want to do with their bodies because they are adults. So that's one part of the conversation. And they use a slogan that I don't use because it's really incompatible with all the work that I do around human rights, about immigrant rights, the LGBTQ plus rights. So they use a slogan saying that sex work is work. um, well, the reality is that not. We see a lot of abuse. We see abuse not only emotionally, psychologically, high grades of PTSD on those that are being bought and sold. But this part of the conversation is fighting for a piece of legislation that usually is known as full decriminalization. So, what is the meaning of this? Because they are coming, their thought of train is that because this is a form of work, everybody should be decriminalized. So nobody should go to jail. And that includes people who are being bought and sold. That includes sex buyers. That includes those that own brothel or that facilitate prostitution. Because under their eyes, they see no harm. They see that this is empowering, and they're really pushing forward this. Usually, it's they call themselves like a lot of times like sex workers. They call themselves like pro sex, pro choice. But what the other part of the conversation is that okay, prostitution is a form of gender-based violence. It's a form of abuse, not only because of the high rates of mental health impact, but we see how people who are being bought and sold are with high rates of STIs. I'm living with HIV due to my trafficking experience, and these are the realities. And as we were saying before, people die in prostitution. A lot of times, traffickers, brothel owners, those that profit from it, kill them once because they think that they are disposable. So this part of the conversation is really acknowledging this is a form of abuse that have been creating. It's a whole system. But what we know and what we think is that people who are being bought and sold, people who are selling their bodies, shouldn't be criminalized because, as I was saying in the beginning, we don't know if someone is coerced. We don't know if someone is forced. We don't know why someone is there. There's always a story behind why someone is in prostitution. There's always going to be like need, being vulnerable, as we were talking, hunger, homelessness. And this part of the conversation, understand that. So we want to keep uh, everything outside the people who are being bought and sold criminalized, because we know that if we give a free pass to people, um, the reality is that brothels, prostitution is going to expand. So we want to keep that in check. We want to continue keeping accountable brothel owners, sex buyers, and traffickers. But also, it's not that we only want to keep people who is being bought and sold out of jail. We want to provide them services because we don't want to put labels on them. But the reality is that we go beyond that. We acknowledge that people have uh, a lot of reasons to enter prostitution, and we want to remove the stigma and all these ideas that you are the one to blame. So we are fighting for a piece of legislation known as the equality model, that it has these tenets. It's like decriminalizing the people who are being bought and sold, continue keeping accountable traffickers, sex buyers, brothel owners, or everyone who is profiting from this, and giving more resources, giving access to support, giving access to everyone who is selling or who is being bought and sold. So that's a huge conversation that is happening in New York State. The reality is that very polarized. I think that there is a lot of common ground. We don't want people who are being bought and sold exploited. We don't want people who are being bought and sold dying, and we want to offer support for all of them. So the equality model is also known as the Nordic model, as the survivor model. And here in New York State, the piece of legislation that represent all these thoughts that we know that New Yorkers deserve better, it's called Sex Trade Survivor Justice and Equality Act. And it has already been introduced in the Senate and in the Assembly, and we are fighting for it. So everywhere that are listening to this is not only for those that are being impacted, but it's also fighting for the future of kids, of youth, of immigrants, of everybody in New York. Because I don't think that we should give a free pass to traffickers, to sex buyers, and to brothel owners to make New York a safe haven for exploitation.
Yeah, it's very simple. We're protecting those who've been basically forced, because we have a lot of studies that there's a very small percentage, as you know, Christian, that actually engage of free will, in this prostitution. There are different studies from 91% to 97%. They've been forced into it, coerced. That is human trafficking. That is sex trafficking. Um, and I think I stole this. I heard it along the line somewhere, but I'm stealing it. No little girl or boy wakes up and says, I'm going to grow up and be a prostitute, or, I'm going to let somebody beat me up and hurt me. We don't want
Yes.
to legalize brothels. We don't want to legalize pimps, traffickers. And again, sex buyers, they're all skirting right now, and the pressure is put on those that are forced into this. So this is a terrific piece of legislation. I will have that in the body of the video so people can read about it. Also, equalitymodelnewyork.org, the website. If you could change one thing right now, Christian, with lawmakers, what would you say to them? Like one thing right now.
Be vocal. A lot of times, victims and survivors, we cannot be vocal about our exploitation and to keep sex buyers accountable. But you can do. You have the power, and it's your responsibility to support your community. And if you want a better community, support the Sex Trade Survivors Justice and Equality Act.
I say amen. Now, Christian, you have turned your pain into purpose. And again, I'm going to keep thanking you, because again, I can't do my job unless you share what, happened to you. It's kind of, for me, I don't like doing it, but I feel like if you want to talk about it, it's necessary that I bring your voice, out there. But there are thousands in New York State, in America, across the globe, still trapped in this silence. So, what is your message to them right now, that we can do beyond, going on X and going on Instagram? We all do that, whatever. Beyond those hashtags and slogans, what do you want to say to them directly?
I would say that it wasn't your fault. Uh,
Yeah.
Whatever type of exploitation happened to you, a lot of times we do things to survive. It wasn't your fault. If you're a victim, a survivor, someone who is actually engaged in the sex trading prostitution, it's not your choice. It's not your fault. It wasn't your fault being exploited. The fault is on the perpetrators, and that you are more than your trauma, than you are more than your darkest moment. And the last thing is that tell your story if you want to tell it, but if you feel coerced, forced, or if you don't want to tell your story, don't tell it. It's yours, and you're the only one who have power over it.
I like that. But I'm going to add to, you point out, and rightfully so, trafficking does not live in the shadows. It's in our schools, neighborhoods, it's on all of our devices, our phones. It thrives wherever silence wins and vigilance loses. And your story and courage reminds us that the first step, Christian, in fighting all of this exploitation is believing it happens right here in our neighborhoods with people we know. So every survivor carries truths with them, the pain and the power, the pain of what happened to them, and then the power of what they have become. And you stand as proof, and we can't thank you enough. You have tremendous human spirit, even after, now, really, the betrayal, the abuse, the hardship, and you've really risen to be such a vocal voice. We appreciate that so much. And we thank you not only for surviving, but for teaching us about all of this and for your persistence and reminding us that justice is not about a press release. It's about taking action and not being silent. So if anybody listening needs help, you know, to reach out to lynswarriors.org. I'll have some resources in the body of the video. And I want to say to you, Cristian, until next time, please promise me you'll come back more often so we can keep talking about Sex Trade Survivors Justice and Equality Act, survivors, empowering, everything that goes along with that. And I want to say to you, never stop fighting, never give up, because we, and you especially, are fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves. Thanks, Cristian.
Thank you so much.
We will talk again soon.
Perfect.